They say every day is for the thief, one day for the owner of the house. But ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, has reversed the role. It is now every day for the owner of the house. If you're involved in bribery, over-invoicing, or any shady deal, the day of reckoning has come. ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, is watching you. If you're reported for any corrupt practice, you'll be investigated, prosecuted, and punished. Corruption is harmful to our nation. Join the campaign against it by reporting any corrupt practice to ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Let we join hands with ICPC, make them better.
Let's make Nigeria great again.
ICPC, they want you.
Come on, for corruption.
Break the chain of corruption now. Don't give, don't take. This message is brought to you by ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission.
It is no longer news that the 2018 Corruption Index by Transparency International ranked Nigeria as the 148th most corrupt among 180 countries in the world. It is believed that Transparency International based its ranking on embezzlement of public funds perpetrated by many government officials, particularly those in positions of authority and some politicians or those holding political office. Many countries have made significant progress in curbing corruption. However, anti-corruption experts are not resting on their oars in terms of finding the final solution to the problem. ICPC recently celebrated this year's African Public Service Day, which was declared by the heads of states and governments of the African Union to draw attention to the need for transparency and accountability in the public service. Against this background, we focus our attention on government policies that obtained in the Nigerian public service in the past, which made public servants prudent and accountable. Welcome to Corruption Must Go, ICPC's weekly television program. I am Hawa Garba. What is responsible for the increase in corruption, especially by public servants? And what are the possible ways to curb the menace? This is the area of focus on this week's edition. We bring you highlights of anti-corruption stories, drama, ethics and values, and more.
Corruption not in my country.
Mr. Job! Mr. Job! What is it now?
What is it now?
Please turn down the volume of your music. It's too loud.
And how is that your business?
It is disturbing me. I can't sleep.
And the same way you are disturbing my right to good music and where I enjoy it. What's wrong with you? Is there another person complaining?
Maybe we thought that you have lost your mind. Are you having a party?
I'm just respecting you, sir. Remember, I paid my house rent too.
You will not understand why we are complaining because you do not care about other people except yourself. Look, the transformation we need in this country begins in this compound.
Yes, now.
From you, and I. This your selfishness is an offshoot of corruption. And corruption not in my country. Go to your bank.
Stop corruption now.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome to this segment on anti-corruption stories. I am Ruth Awudi. A Federal Capital Territory High Court sitting in Jabi, Abuja, has sentenced a civil servant in the office of the Auditor General of the Federation, James Ayodele Leby, to 2 years imprisonment for using fake Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria certificate to gain promotion in his office. Justice Y. Halilu also imposed a 100,000 naira fine on the convict who will spend his jail term in prison in Kefi, Nasarawa State, following the conclusion of a case brought against him by ICPC. Earlier, ICPC in a one-count charge had told the court that the convict had approached the Director of Admin and Human Resources in AGF with a fake ICANN certificate requesting that he be converted and upgraded from the position of an executive officer to that of a senior auditor. The judge, while passing the judgment, said that the convict deserved to be sentenced accordingly as punishment, as well as deterrence to others from committing the same crime. He called on the federal government to ensure strict vetting of its workers to prevent those with fake certificates from hiding in the system, and advised the government to scrutinize all employees on its payroll to ensure that people like the convict do not take advantage of the system, because the convict would have risen to the prestigious position of AGF if he had not been caught. The acting chairman of ICPC, Dr. Musa Usman Abubakar, has described corruption as the most pressing governance and development challenge confronting the Africa region. Presenting a paper titled Improved Regional and National Space and Platform for Anti-Corruption Agenda in Africa at the opening ceremony of African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council, recently in Abuja, Dr. Abubakar lamented the endemic corruption in Africa despite the various legal instruments adopted and signed by the international communities and African countries.
It's undoubtedly the most pressing governance and development challenge confronting the African region. It impedes economic growth by encouraging misappropriation of scarce resources by few, leading to the pauperization of the majority of the citizenry. In the political realm, corruption undermines the rule of law and respect for human rights. It also compromises accountability, transparency, and good governance. It is pertinent to note that realizing the intergenerational effects of this cankerworm, the international community and African countries in particular adopted some legal instruments aimed at combating corruption. Permit me to enumerate some of the legal instruments. One, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, that is UNCAC, the Constitutive Act of the African Union, the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption, African Charter on Democracy, Election and Governance, ECOWAS Protocol on the Fight Against Corruption, and South African Development Community Protocol 2011. These instruments provide the framework for the fight against corruption in Africa.
He alluded to the implementation of transparency and accountability mechanisms such as the e-government platforms like Treasury Single Account, Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System, and Government Integrated Financial Management Information System, as what had helped significantly in reducing opportunity for corruption in Nigeria. The ICPC boss mentioned other anti-corruption measures to include the reformed administration of criminal justice processes, robust engagement with civil society organizations, and citizenry in social reorientation and enlightenment. The meeting, which was attended by representatives of CSOs in the Africa region, was held in Abuja and lasted for 2 days. That will be all on this segment. Corruption Must Go continues with Hawa. Stay with us.
are the factors that helped to keep corruption low in the public service in the past. We spoke to a cross-section of Nigerians.
Oh, the increase in corruption, I will say what is responsible for it begins with attitudes. Our attitude is responsible for it. But when you have an attitude that whatever that comes to you is your own, and you are contented with what you have, you will not be corrupt. Corruption begins from the mind. So it has to do with attitude. And then in civil service today, I will say that government policy is also responsible for corruption. It contributes a lot as to what makes people, the growth of corruption today. Why do I say government policy? Today, you look at the policies of government to the civil service or to the civil servant, you will discover that MDAs of the same country, the same nations, are receiving different salaries and incentive. And then you will look at it that someone who is in one MDA where such incentive is not given will look for a way to measure up with his colleague in another ministry. Because the people out there wouldn't want to know which ministry you are working. All they want to know is that you are working. Are you not working like this other person? And then why is that person like this and you are not like this? You will imagine that the director in some office is receiving 250,000. And you see in some offices within the same country, somebody who is on level 6, a diploma holder is receiving 250 or 250,000. So the gap is too much. And also, before now, as people grow in service, there are incentives that follow. Government make provisions. In fact, for a long time, I've not heard what they call car loan. But when I came into service newly, I discovered that every ministry, there is a form they give to civil servant. According to your grade, you are entitled to car loan. All what people are gathering today is because they want to live in affluence. Somebody wants to buy house, somebody wants to build house. But when government makes all this available to people, civil servant, as they grow, you will see that it will reduce corruption, because you know that definitely there is a provision in the policy for you that if not now, certainly later, government has some package for you that will help you to have all this. Because human needs are insatiable and we're always in the quest to have more. But when government puts policy in place to give this to people, you will discover that it will reduce corruption.
I want to believe that in this nation we can tackle corruption by doing a lot of things right. A lot of focus is on government. I want to believe that if we diversify our economy, a lot of corruption will be stemmed. I remember growing up as a young boy, a lot of our activities are on the farm. A hungry person, they say, is an angry person. A hungry person wants to go a long way to steal, but if you are short of food, then the idea of corruption will be less reduced. A lot of our people go into corruption because they need to go back, especially those are political leaders. They need to go back and take care or settle or give money and things to the people at the background who are hungry. So if we can tackle poverty at the lower level, it will help us to stem corruption. And I think our budgeting system is equally wrong. We need to work out in such a way that we're able to start our budget in January and take it to the end in December. I also remember growing up during the military, our budgets will start in January and we have 12 months to spend it. What happens now is we have our budget at the middle of the month. Releases are not made until towards the end of the year. I will have by March to spend it, and people who are supposed to spend it will do things in a rush to get it spent. So I think if we tackle diversification of our economy by reducing poverty and making sure that we do things at the right time, a lot will be solved by way of corruption. Thank you.
Corruption, anti-corruption endeavor for quite some time, but I didn't know until today that ICPC has a broad mandate in the area of curbing corruption in the public sector. And for me, I have always argued that this is really the sector that we need to engage if we want to be successful in this fight. There's huge corruption within the civil service in Nigeria. There's huge corruption within the public sector. Politicians, yes, they are part of the process, but a deeper rot is within the public sector. And for me, this is the area in which we should really sit down and begin to identify strategies that can combat corruption, basically. The challenge of dispensation of justice in our country is also one of them. The roles of lawyers, who represent people who are brought before courts is also another reason, So there are various reasons, really. The sincerity of purpose that is demonstrated by those who are also charged with the responsibility of combating corruption is also another cause, And much more fundamentally, as we're implementing this project, it is increasingly becoming, we're increasingly becoming aware of the fact that there are some people who actually think some corrupt practices are allowed, or that they don't know these are corrupt practices. It is shocking. We had a conversation this morning where most people had a debate about whether a particular conduct was corruption related or whatever. So again, I think what we would suggest is that there should be greater awareness. We should have a common ground. Even if we're not going to completely agree on certain issues, we should have some common ground on conduct that is acceptable and conduct that is not acceptable.
Well, personally, I think that our education sector has suffered a lot. I had asked this question some 2 years ago when we had a meeting back home with the legislators in my state. I asked if, because some representatives of the National Orientation Agency were there, I asked if the National Orientation Agency is doing some form of education across schools. Ordinarily, even from the very cradle, citizens are already supposed to know what is right, what is acceptable, the norms and morals of society. That if the education sector is really being focused on, it's a sad fact, we all know that the education sector does not get much funding in our budgets yearly. So if enough focus is on education, most of these things that we experience, people will not be carrying them out. So I would think that a very sound policy on education, starting from the cradle, will help reduce.
Yes, the first thing is it has brought awareness. A number of civil society organizations are not much aware of the operation system of the ICPC. Now, the collaboration has brought up a very important level of awareness for the CSCs. They now know where to channel their corruption grievances. They now know who to consult whenever they have information concerning corruption. And it has also encouraged them more not to relent in fishing out anybody or any institution who is corrupt. So it has actually given them a strength to be able to be within the system of anti-corruption as a whole.
Mr. Gad Natambako is ICPC's head of administration. He speaks further on the subject.
This occasion is a public service day, Africa's public service day. In the wisdom of this government, the government decided that the theme should tie it with corruption, and so this is celebrating the transformation program of this government with respect to the public service and anti-corruption. The desire, the intention is to get the public service to rise up to the reality of the day that everybody in the present dispensation desires, that we should all join hands to combat corruption, and that is why this day held. Now the essence of the day is that Africa has decided that there is a need to transform the public services in Africa, towards making the continent a better continent than it is today. It is common knowledge that we all admire what the other continents are, and we think that we can transform the way they did. And so this is a wake-up call for the public services of the African nations that we should rise up and do the right thing. We should rise up and remove the obstacles to our development. We should rise up and kill corruption, which is the main reason why there is stagnation in our development.
Corruption not in my country.
I don't get a lot. Boy, they won't booga me small. They say, man, give them bribe. I say, nothing. Okay, now, we'll go block later. You remember that contract we will do that time now? They don't pay.
But first, you see the house rent with the old since. We go first call caretaker, take the money, slap him.
Beg, see, you know, say I get annual levy why they pay for club. Where me and boys they shout beer in our house, I could pay that one. You remember say me and tell you I go buy you motor. I go buy now.
Okay, they pay you money now. We don't they beg caretaker? Why would they beg landlord, old man, and they agree give us time? Money can't come now. You won't divert time. You said na corruption. Corruption, not in my house and not in my country.
Sure.
Corruption not in my country.
Get annual.
From the foregoing, it is obvious and indisputable that if the government restored those good policies that made its workers contented and workers themselves return to the good values of the past, we will be on the path to uprooting or eliminating corruption in all its facets. People should obey rules and laws irrespective of status. Sanctions and punishment should be meted out to erring ones according to the law. Though it seems like a daunting task, it is possible to eliminate corruption and other related offenses in Nigeria. Thank you for watching and see you again next week. Bye for now.